At just 19, Holger Rune defeated Novak Djokovic to win the 2022 Paris Masters, becoming the youngest champion at the event since Boris Becker 38 years before that. That week, he beat 5 straight top 10 players, an extraordinary run for a teenager. Earlier that season, he'd reached the French Open quarterfinals as an unseeded player, and in 2023 he backed it up with quarterfinal runs at Roland Garros and Wimbledon. It looked like the beginning of a straight climb to the top, a fearless young star taking down the game's biggest names and announcing himself as a future world #1. But since that breakthrough, the trajectory hasn't been as smooth. The talent has never been in question, but the consistency has. Rune has gone from beating Djokovic, Alcaraz, and Medvedev to suffering early exits at slams he was expected to contend for. And behind these swings, one pattern stands out more than any statistic. Rune has moved through coaches faster than almost any top player of his generation. This is the story of a generational talent and the coaching instability that has shaped his early career. Before we talk about why the changes matter, we need to understand the level of player we're dealing with. By age 20, Rune had already beaten Novak Djokovic twice, in Paris in 2022 and again in Rome in 2023. He reached the final of the Monte Carlo Masters in 2023, beating Daniil Medvedev and Jannik Sinner, and then reached another Masters final in Rome, defeating Casper Ruud in the semifinals. These performances weren't isolated runs. Rune consistently took out elite players across surfaces, climbing to world #4 in August 2023. His backhand is one of the cleanest in the sport, his return game already elite, and mentally he has the kind of competitive fire that thrives against top opponents. In short, he has the game of a future Grand Slam contender, which makes his next chapter even more surprising, because the one thing that hasn't stayed steady is the world around him. Before the coaching changes began, Rune's foundation was built on stability. His childhood coach, Lars Christensen, shaped his technique, his physical identity, and his mentality. In 2022, Rune added Patrick Mouratoglou, one of tennis's most successful modern coaches and longtime mentor of 23-time Grand Slam winner Serena Williams, not as a replacement, but as a high-performance layer on top of Christensen's structure. This combination produced the best tennis of his career. Rune won the 2022 Paris Masters, reached the finals of Monte Carlo and Rome, and rose into the top 5. The setup was clear, aligned, and effective. But as the results climbed, so did the expectations. And soon after this peak, the coaching dynamics around Rune began to change. First gently, then dramatically. The first major shift came when Rune split with Mouratoglou in April 2023. Weeks later, he brought him back for the clay season. It was the first sign of a coaching structure that wouldn't stay fixed for long. Later that year, reports confirmed Rune had parted ways with Christensen, ending the long-standing partnership that formed his entire tennis identity. By October 2023, Rune hired Boris Becker. 2 months later, Severin Luthi, from Roger Federer's team, joined him. In the space of a few months, Rune went from a stable duo to a carousel of major coaching names, and it kept accelerating. After a second-round exit at the 2024 Australian Open, Rune split with Luthi. Days later, Becker stepped down, citing limited availability. Rune then reunited with Mouratoglou in February 2024, only to split again in July, their third separation. In August 2024, he hired Danish coach Kenneth Carlsen. In September, with Carlsen unavailable for the Asian swing, Rune brought in Benjamin Ibrahimzadeh. That October, he reunited again with Lars Christensen, returning to his roots. In less than 2 seasons, Rune went from stability to a full coaching turnstile. Doors opening, doors closing, voices changing constantly. Changing coaches in tennis isn't unusual. Changing them fast enough that the player can't build a long-term identity, that's the strange part. For a young player, coaching stability affects everything. Technical development needs major changes take months to embed. For tactical clarity, a player needs one philosophy, not a new plan every 4 tournaments. Physical planning requires training cycles and only work with long-range coordination. And for emotional trust, it's the coach is the first person a player turns to under pressure. When the coach changes, all of that resets. New language, new priorities, new expectations. And for someone as intense and analytical as Rune, these resets are even more significant. Rune thrives on feedback. He leans into direction. He pushes for improvement, rapidly. When those voices keep changing, he isn't just tweaking tactics. He's rebuilding an entire relationship every few months. That has consequences. His most stable period, under Christensen and Mouratoglou, produced a Masters 1000 title and a top 4 ranking. Since then, every time the coaching box turns over, a similar pattern follows. Flashes of brilliance, dips in form, uncertainty, and reset. Not failure, but a recurring interruption in momentum. This isn't about blaming coaches. It's about the cost of never letting any coach stay long enough to shape the next phase of his growth. Rune's results don't collapse when he changes coaches. He's too good for that. But the pattern is clear. His sharpest, most consistent tennis has come when the structure around him stayed still, and the opposite is true as well. During mid-2023 to early 2024, his most turbulent coaching stretch, his results dipped. He lost 10 of the 11 matches between Wimbledon and the autumn swing. First round exit at 2023 US Open as the world number 4 and a 2024 second round loss at Australian Open, seeded 8th. The cause isn't change, coach, lose, match. Tennis is more complex. But when the team changes constantly, the same cycle returns. Good weeks, confusing weeks, another reset. For a player with his upside, that cycle has become his biggest obstacle. Understanding why he switches coaches so often requires understanding how he's built. Rune is intense, emotional, analytical, and relentlessly ambitious. He doesn't wait for things to fix themselves. He forces change. In 2024, he even admitted publicly that he'd made mistakes, including switching coaches too often. He also acknowledged being too hard on himself, something his mother, Anek, who has played a huge role in his career, has also echoed. He doesn't chase change because he lacks focus. He chases it because he wants the perfect fit. He wants a voice that pushes him without friction, guides him without limiting him, and challenges him without overwhelming him. That mindset is both his engine and his trap. The same fire that makes him fearless also makes him restless. When communication isn't smooth or results dip, his instinct is not patience. It is that of replacement. He isn't rebelling against coaching. He's searching for the version of coaching that feels exactly right. The question now is whether the search itself has become part of the problem. Rune isn't the first prodigy to face this pattern. On the women's tour, Emma Raducanu cycled through multiple coaches after her 2021 US Open win. Different personalities, different philosophies, constant resets. The lesson applies across the sport. Even exceptional talent struggles to build momentum when the support system keeps changing. And that brings us to the most important part of Rune's story. Holger Rune has the tools to become a Grand Slam champion. He has beaten the very best. He's reached Masters finals on multiple surfaces. He's shown physical gifts, tactical maturity, and mental fire rare for someone so young. But in October 2025, Rune suffered a full Achilles rupture during the Nordic Open semi-final, an injury that will keep him out for a while. At first glance, it's another setback, but looking at a possible silver lining, it may actually give him something he hasn't had in years. Time. Time to pause the constant resets, time to reflect without pressure, time to let a structure take root instead of restarting around him. Time to choose patience over immediacy. What if this forced break becomes the moment where he commits to stability, the one thing his talent has been waiting for? Rune has already shown he can rise fast. He's shown he can beat the best. He has the fire required for greatness. What he hasn't had, not long enough, is the chance to let a long-term structure evolve with him. If he uses this pause wisely, trusts the process, lets things settle, and resists the urge to scramble for the next change, the version of Holger Rune that returns might be the one the sport has been expecting all along. Because for a player with this much ability, the question isn't if he can win the big tournaments. It has always been about time and what he chooses to do with it next. How do you think will Rune do in 2026 and beyond? Can he win a Grand Slam title soon enough? Do answer in the comments with your predictions.